Good morning. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Mesa City Council study session for August the 16th. Welcome back, everyone. We've been on vacation for a couple weeks, so it's good to be back in the saddle. The first item on our agenda for this meeting is to review items on agenda for the August 20th council meeting. So please refer to that document. We have several things on here that purchase items and others that have been waiting for a few weeks. So plenty on here. First several items are liquor licenses and purchasing contracts. Various resolutions, setting public hearings. Item 8 is to conduct a public hearing. That's not on the consent agenda, is it, Mr. Smith?
That's for our continuance.
Oh, the continuance, okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I know, I think most councilors may have been briefed on this, but if you'd like, we are ready to make a presentation on item 6K. That's a little unique on the automated kiosk for the
Oh, right, yes, I think we all.
cell phone. So maybe, I know you've had some briefings, but if you'd like to hear from staff, we're prepared to do that today too.
Thank you. I think this is a good information for the public to know, and it is a change of policy of sorts. So welcome, Tim. We're anxious to hear more about, this is agenda item 6K having to do with automated kiosks for recycling cell phones, right?
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council. My name's Tim Meyer. I'm the licensing administrator, and I'm joined by Lieutenant Redwing from the police department. We'd just like to get a small presentation on the kiosk ordinance, which is a new ordinance that we've developed. Basically, EcoATM is one of the driving forces behind this code. This is a picture of their kiosks, if it comes up, that they're wanting to put in the city of Mesa. They've got kiosks in other cities as well, and they've been looking to spread out throughout the valley cities. So the ordinance applies really to all the secondhand operators, not just EcoATM. We are requiring a one-time company application. You notice the proposed fee of $500. That's a little higher than our normal licensing fees, but that's to offset some of the costs from them not having to pay the $3 per ticket fees that we've negotiated through this process. Basically, because of their business model, they take in a lot of items that are really old or don't work, and therefore there's little to no value in them. They're really looking to recycle the items and to bring them in that way. So to offset that cost, we've looked at a little higher costs on the application and the licensing fees, which they've agreed to. We are looking at an issuance fee of $500 as well, and then there'll be a renewal fee on those licenses as well. Each location is going to go through an approval process, so the police department will have input into that. So at each location that they want to put a kiosk in, the police department will be looking at such things as crime rates and so forth in that area and decide if that's a good area to go into or not. And if they have concerns, they'll bring those up with EcoATM and they will work those things out. And any other kiosk operator that would come along. At this point in time, it's just EcoATM that's looking at putting the kiosks out. Some of the key features of this are they're going to have a live rep there. So anytime that the kiosk is operational, they'll have a live person on the other end to talk to the customers that are coming in that want to give their items up. They will be required to have ID, so they'll be looking at their ID and making sure that it's matching the person that's there to sell the items or to bring the items in. They're going to have access, our PD is going to have access to the items upon their request. EcoATM has been very good about us having access to those ATMs as the police department needs those. So it'll be actually the police department will be contacting ATM if they feel a need for those items, and EcoATM will open up those kiosks and give them access. We did put a suspension and revocation and a hearing process into this and an appeal process. So basically, if we have any operators that are having issues or whatever, and the police department finds the need to cite them, they will have a recourse to come back through us and have a hearing. And if they're found responsible yet through that hearing process, we can actually suspend and revoke their license if we have any issues. If there are any convictions, it is a Class 1 misdemeanor. So if they're convicted of anything, it will actually go through the court if it's a criminal activity, and it would apply with the misdemeanor requirements. That's pretty much it on the Eco ATM. Along with this code, we're bringing forth the secondhand code. Do you have any questions on the Eco ATM before we move on to secondhand? I just kind of want to touch real quickly on the secondhand, since that code is affected by this, because we're actually pulling the kiosk code out of the secondhand code, basically, so that there's an exemption within the secondhand code now to allow the kiosks to exist. So,
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So it seems like the obvious concern here would be that this is going to facilitate people who steal cell phones, and this is the way that you fence a stolen cell phone. So I know that the police department has vetted this, and there's some safeguards in here to prevent that from happening. And you just explained some of those. There's going to be a live person. You're going to have to show ID. What other safeguards are in this? For example, that they're going to test the phone, and if they're going to plug you plug the phone in when you turn it in.
They do.
And if it's a phone that's been reported stolen, we got you, right? But maybe explain more. What are the other safeguards here, so that we're not just facilitating the stealing of cell phones here?
well, that basically pretty much are the safeguards that go through with that. And if Eco ATM accepts the merchandise and the police department finds that they're stolen for whatever reason, then they'll access those, and Eco ATM will be out the merchandise, pretty much like any other secondhand store, anyone that would take those items in as well. So it has a hold period, just like the other code, or the secondhand code will have for the other items as well. So the Eco ATM and the other, anyone else that would come on board would have to hold those items and give the police department adequate time to go through and search those items and make sure that there's not any stolen or lost, stolen or lost, I guess, items. And then they could recover those items by contacting Eco ATM.
So if you've got a theft situation, somebody steals my phone, they run immediately to the kiosk. I haven't reported it as stolen yet, so they go ahead and pay them whatever the phone's worth.
Right.
They have to hold it for
20 days.
20 days, and presumably during that 20 days, I'd notify the police my cell phone was stolen, and I'd be able to recover my phone.
Yes, and that is one thing in the code, by the way, too. Thank you for bringing that up, Mayor, that we're going to increase the hold time from 10 days to 20 days. The police department has found that a lot of the victims, by the time they get their pictures together and the IDs together and actually realize even that the items are gone, it gives them a little more time to report that to the police department so that they can take action on those items. So the code is we are requesting an increase from the 10 days to the 20 days to allow for that too. So that'll give more opportunity for the victims to be able to get their information to the police department.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Mr. Myers, so with the company forfeiture of the devices, they eat the cost if they pay it out?
They would.
They eat that cost, so.
Yes. And that's the same for the secondhand stores now, if they did that too. If the secondhand or pawn takes in something that's stolen, the police department finds that, they confiscate the item and the company's out those. So it's a business risk that they take.
Quick question, what are the locations that we're talking about? Can be anywhere, or there's specific locations that either the company or you all recommending or looking at as far as the permit process?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Heredia. Eco ATM can go anywhere they want in the city for the most part. The only stipulation we have in the code is that the police department has a right to vet those locations. So I'm not positive, but I think they're looking at 2 locations right now, and then they want to expand from that. So I think as they find the business warrants it, they'll like to put in some more kiosks throughout the city of Mesa. But like I said, the police department does have the right to go through this, and they will vet this through the police department so that they have a right to go through and say, this is maybe not a good idea, or this is a fine area. We don't have a problem with it, so.
Great, thanks. I think we interrupted you during
No,
your
you're fine.
presentation.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Just some of the modifications to the secondhand code. This code hasn't had any significant updates since 1995, so it was due anyway. So this gave us an opportunity to go through the code and make some good updates to it. Really, we're repealing this code and reintroducing it just because we've made so many changes to it. It really got gutted. So a lot of it just got moved around and reorganized. So now it's more consistent with our other codes. It's more readable. We added some of the key features, which I'm going to go through right here. One of the big ones is that we got a lot of the state statutes updated within this code, so we reference a lot of those. So as the state changes their codes, our code just automatically becomes compliant because we just quote the state codes. We've got the sections now more consistent with our other city codes. One of the other key factors that we did now is that we've put the DPS requirements in so that now the police department can do DPS background checks. So before they were doing manual checks, which was very time intensive and labor intensive. So this will be able to send it to DPS and they'll broadcast that throughout the United States. And if there's any hits out there, then the police department will know about it. One of the key things the police department's been working on too is online tickets. So that's coming on board now too. So the code now is updating or is being updated to allow the online tickets, which means instead of selling these paper tickets to the pawn shops and to the secondhand dealers, we're going to be able to do everything, or they're going to be able to do everything online, which is going to be great. It's going to be good for them and it's going to be good for the police department. So everything will come in legible, neat. Everything will be itemized really nice and they can do it all electronically. So this code now is going to allow for that. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to look for the proposed 20-day hold period instead of the 10-day hold period. We're going to modify the verbiage also. Right now, the current code has Mesa PD in it, or Mesa Police Department in it. It's now going to allow any peace officer to come in if they have an issue. I'm sure they'll coordinate with the police department, but if they need to, they'll have access to it according to the code too. They won't have to go through the police department if they want to access their stolen goods. There's now an appeal process that's going to be consistent with the other codes, which means if somebody gets cited for something and they want to appeal that, there's now a good solid process for that. And then obviously we're going to exempt kiosks from the secondhand code, so we're going to create that niche for them so that anyone that wants to operate kiosks will now be allowed to, and the secondhand code will not be out of compliance with that. And with that, I'll take any other questions.
Thank you. Kevin?
Tim, thank you for the update. I've been out of the loop a little bit, or for a few years, on the scrap metal and the state statutes and so forth around the scrap metal dealers. Are we still having issues with copper theft and with people stripping wires out of streetlights and taking the backflow preventers? And are we still having a big issue like that and throughout Mesa?
I've been out of the districts for a few months too, so I haven't seen the most updated current trends, council member. But as far as that, to my knowledge, it looks like it's been on a downtrend. The wire and the backflow valves have been stemmed pretty effectively.
And so is it the state statutes that were put in place that on the scrap dealers taking in that type of material? Do you think that's what has been the biggest turn, I guess?
I think a combination of regulation and enforcement.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. So this item is on the consent agenda. Council, any concerns or anything you'd like to remove from the consent agenda for Monday? Okay, if not, the next item on our agenda for this meeting is item 2, approval of minutes from the executive sessions held on June 21st, July 2nd, and July 9th. Is there a motion? Thank you. And a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Luna, I apologize. I thank you for speaking up.
No problem, Mayor. I've been here all along.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty. Obviously, Vice
okay.
Mayor's not with us, but he's here telephonically, so thank you for being here, Mr. Luna.
Sure.
Item 3 on our agenda is appointments to the Housing Services Board, Housing and Community Development Board, Human Relations Board, Judicial Advisory Board, Museum and Cultural Board, and Transportation Board. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Glover. Mr. Freeman, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next item is acknowledgement of the receipt of minutes of boards and committees.
Mayor,
Yes.
we need to pull item 4D.
Okay, that would be the Economic Development Advisory Board meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so with the exception of 4D, is there a motion to acknowledge receipt of those minutes? Thank you, Mr. Glover. Mr. Freeman, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 5, here reports on meetings and conferences attended. I'm sure we've all been busy over the last few weeks. We could spend a lot of time on this, but anything stand out that you'd like to share with us, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, yesterday was a big, exciting day for Mesa. Yourself as well as Councilmember Whitaker and I helped open the Apple Global Command Center out in District 6. So that was phenomenal. A $2 billion, 1.3 million square foot facility. Was pretty impressive what they've been able to do over the last couple of years as far as taking what was basically just an open footprint, an open warehouse, and converting it into what it is, today. And then following that, Councilmember Heredia and I went over to the United Food Bank and helped cut the ribbon on the new refrigerator there that allows them to take in more produce and serve more people. So it was yesterday was a good day for Mesa.
Yes, it was. Mr. Freeman?
You have more comments?
Oh, no, well, I just say amen to Mr. Thompson. It's hard to overstate the significance of having the biggest company in the world have a major facility in your city. So the ripple effect of that Apple facility and literally the billions of dollars that they're spending in our community are something that we really need to acknowledge and give up thanks for. So thanks for everybody. And this is something that's been evolving over the last several years. So, and they couldn't have been more complimentary of the city of Mesa. These are people who are literally the heads of Apple that were there, head of real estate, head of the operations. And they said, Mesa stands out to us. Maybe they say that everywhere they go, but I really don't think so. They said, when we go other places, we talk about Mesa. And they were very sincere in that. So they talked about particularly city staff and how responsive they were during this process. And so really we need to pass on those compliments in a heartfelt way to everyone who has helped create such a great reputation among that community for us. So thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I just wanted to give a great shout out to our respective departments. You know, during our storms and outages that we had, crews were everywhere. We had about 130 trees blown over in the Mesa Cemetery, and that was closed for a period of time. I know Dobson Ranch sustained some damage. I know other parts of the city. I know city staff was all over it, especially our police and fire departments, as well as transportation. In fact, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community reached out to us. Talking Stick had closed down due to the flooding in there. And so they required additional automatic aid resources. So fire went over and then coordinated with our transportation department to bring some pumps over that are trailer mounted. And we're at standby and ready to help the Salt River Indian community and Talking Stick. So I think these are great training exercises. It allows us to integrate into other communities and share our resources. So again, to the fire department, that's just a great kudos to them and being there and helping with that. Also, we had also a, not as big as Apple, but Cognizant was at Riverview. And they're one of the Fortune 200 company, and they had a lot of digital technology there. They opened up one of their companies, 100,000 square feet at Waypoint. So they're bringing 500 new jobs to Mesa. Mayor and I were fortunate to be there and appreciated doing that. I do have some open office hours. I'll be reaching out in the community on September 6th, and that's something I look forward to do. I also want to take a moment and remind us how fragile life is. Tomorrow will be the memorial service for Captain Paramedic Craig Chinnery, who worked for Mesa Fire and Medical Department. He recently took his own life, and it impacted our public safety departments. Craig had worked for Rural Metro Fire for 8 years and also almost 16 years for Mesa Fire. I had the opportunity to work as his captain, and he was my engineer for several months. And I'm still dealing with it, and as well as a lot of employees with the fire department, because his quality of work and enthusiasm as a Mesa Fire employee was just over the top. And I personally can't think of a better man. So I know that many of our firefighters are manning his casket 24 hours a day until the memorial service is held tomorrow morning in Gilbert at 10 o'clock. But I'd also want his family to know that we have deep sympathy for them, and the support that everybody has given to the family is just over the top. I want to thank our fire and police chiefs for being diligently coping with this situation and making the best out of difficult circumstances. You know, the support of everybody protecting his body and providing the help to the family is insurmountable, and that'll go a long ways. His wife, Mary, worked for Mesa Police Department, and you know, she's coping with a difficult situation in her life, as well as his adult children and his first wife. But I want to thank all those that have been able to reach out and support the family. This is just a tender time in not only the city of Mesa, but for the families involved. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And at Mr. Freeman's suggestion, we will be having a moment of silence for Captain Chinnery at our meeting on Monday. And so I know everyone here echoes your sentiment and our sympathies to the family, not just the family, but we know how it impacts the department. So certainly we're mindful and express our appreciation to the family. In a similar vein, I appreciate you mentioning how responsive our public safety departments have been to the damage that's occurred during the storm season. I mean, every one of our districts has been significantly impacted by that. There's been hundreds of downed trees in the streets of our community. There's been a lot of a very dramatic video of lives being saved in canals with our public safety departments over the last few weeks. I know there was another fairly dramatic situation where a tree crashed through a home and injured someone in their home. And that person needed help both before, during, and after that incident. And I know particularly our fire union got involved in a very personal way in, after the fact, providing services and helping that person to repair their home, to get that tree out of the way. You would never say it, but I know you were personally involved in that, Mr. Freeman. So anyway, I was very proud of the way our public safety departments responded and are still responding to the storm season. So thank you very much to them. Council, other announcements? Okay. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 6. That's the schedule for future meetings and general information. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, we will be having our study session and city council meeting on August 20th. Also next week, though, is the, I think, beginning Tuesday night or Wednesday is the League of Cities Conference, so we will not be having a study session that Thursday. But we will be having a council meeting on the 27th. So we'll put out the agenda. If you have any questions, please contact staff. Also, just a reminder for those trying to finish up their summer activities, the roads and Skyline pools are still open for public swim on Saturdays and Sundays, but Labor Day, September 3rd, it will be the last day the pools will be open for the season. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, council, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.